We're back. Are we? Why, yes we are. Wait a minute, who's back? Oh, dinosaurs. Well, that's nice. We like them. Audiences certainly did in the early 90s, given the Diplodocus-sized success of Jurassic Park. But was there a thirst for animated dinosaurs? Well, at this point, not so much. We're Back, A Dinosaur Story came out in the same year as Jurassic Park in 1993 and was marketed as a kid-friendly dinosaur movie designed as it was to ride on that Speilberg Stegosaurus tail of success. And unfortunately, it did a bit of a poor job of that, as it clawed back just $9.3 million from its rumoured $20 million budget. Youch. What's surprising is that Spielberg was actually one of the producers of the movie, proving that even the great man himself cannot make dino magic happen at bloody will. Universal Pictures won out on a bidding war for the 1987 children's book on which this is based, against Hanna-Barbera, who must have been acting very sassily at the following year's award ceremonies at the movie's poor performance. We're Back tells the story of 4 dinosaurs who have been time-napped from their prehistoric chronology and deposited into 1993
New York City.
They were brought to this most unsuitable of surroundings by a time-travelling inventor called Captain New Eyes, who wants the children of the modern world to see dinosaurs with their very own eyes. He sets them on a path to meet with a professor in the Museum of Natural History, but on the way they encounter a pair of children, and worse than this, a villainous circus mogul twin brother of the good captain who plans on exploiting the dinos for $, in his circus. What can be said for We're Back is that it has quite the eclectic cast. Rhea Perlman, Martin Short and John Goodman certainly seem appropriately famous celebrity voices for the early 1990s, as do Roger Rabbit voice actor Charles Fleischer and Bart Simpson's larynx provider Yeardley Smith. But American celeb chef Julia Child, newsreader Walter Cronkite and talk show host Jay Leno, not to mention British national treasure Felicity Kendall, would most likely be on lower scoring answers on Pointless should Alexander Armstrong finally run out of questions about films people have actually bloody seen. As well as performing dismally with audiences, the critics also turned their dino muzzles up at it too. The movie has an aggregated approval rating of 38% based on 16 professional reviews on aggregator Rotten Tomatoes. 3 video games were released based on the movie. The MS-DOS and Super Nintendo versions were similar to the Mega Drive version we're covering here, but these don't follow the plotline of the movie. In that version, the dinosaurs themselves embark on a rescue mission to get the Kiddywinks from the movie freed from their bondage, whereas in the Sega version you'll be controlling the children themselves across
New York City
with occasional dino-based levels. There is also a Game Boy game which has had a wild history when you look into it. It was most commonly known as Baby T-Rex, but was reskinned several times. In America and Canada, it was the license for We're Back. In Sweden, it was licensed for Bamps, a popular Swedish cartoon character, and in Australia, it was based on the very Australian-sounding Agrosaur. Bloody aggro, mate. The UK nearly had this in the form of a Ed the Duck title, and it even got to the point where it was reviewed in Game Zone magazine, but right at the point of distribution, the licence was revoked by the BBC, which is something they notably didn't do with the Ed the Duck 2 licence on the Amiga, which was much worse than this. The makers of that particular game, Beam Software, started hawking around the licence at various trade shows after that disappointment. It was nearly a Hugo game, as in, that character from the games where you had to use your phone on Saturday morning telly to control it. Yeah, that one. A Smurfs licence, and even a Sooty licence. Can you imagine a Sooty game on the Game Boy? It might well have happened, but it didn't. The Baby T-Rex game on the Game Boy got reworked in the end to being a Super Nintendo title in the form of Radical Rex. Ultimately, I probably should have covered the Game Boy version because it's got a far more interesting backstory. But as I've just covered everything that's interesting about it, I guess I don't have to. So yes, the Genesis version, much like all the other versions, was released courtesy of High-Tech Expressions and only to those in North America, hence why I called Sega's 16-bit console by its heathen American name. We've had several run-ins with High-Tech Expressions before, as they were behind the Muppet Adventure and Tom and Jerry Frantic Antics. It was coded though by Funcom Oslo, who surprisingly enough are still working on games as of 2025, which is great considering the amount of coding teams that have gone under since the 1990s that I've discussed on this channel. On the Mega Drive, they did the Days Before Christmas game and the infamous Brazil-only abortion known as Nightmare Circus. You start the game by choosing who you're going to play as, be it the boy from the movie, Louis, or the girl, Cecilia. You can't change character once you've started, but you won't need to. They play exactly the same, with only the order of their levels organised slightly differently. There are two parts to the game. The meat of the game is a 2D platformer type of affair, with the rest of the game having you control the dinosaurs in rear perspective flying or driving games. Presentation-wise, it's pretty decent. The lead children are animated extremely well, and while the levels themselves are rather bland in their look when compared to an Aladdin or Gargoyle, say, I think that overall it gets a nod of approval from me for its general aesthetic. The dinosaur levels too look pretty decent for the 16-bit era hardware, but the music, it's dire stuff generally. Gameplay for the platform parts of the game are best described as perfunctory. The controls are neither broken nor perfect, and I think they do need a little bit of fine-tuning. However, the rather insipid level design marries well with the previously described dour level graphics. Its Norse origins are very evident in its delivery. Make no mistake, this plays like a higher-end Amiga platformer rather than a state-of-the-then-art Mega Drive platform game. Clues are everywhere. Enemies scurry backwards and forwards on their perches mindlessly at various speeds, but not actually attacking, but by causing damage by running through you. While the level design is A to B generally, there's also mazes around very samey, bland-looking environments, and the game's bosses that are dotted around are represented by large, well-drawn but barely animated sprites just hopping up and down. It is very Euro platformer, not in an entirely good way either. All that it's missing is a gradient skybox and 3,000 pickups on every screen. The dino stages are a welcome break from the predictable nature of the human levels. At first. A lot of men back then would have loved to have pressed Felicity Kendall's nubbins and buttons in the 70s and 80s, but now they get their chance to, albeit with her in the form of a pterodactyl. You'll be swooping about through collectibles and avoiding enemies in a My First Afterburner looking type affair. The other land-based dinosaurs also get a bit of into-the-screen action as they commandeer cars through the streets of
New York City.
If the next Jurassic Park movie has a T-Rex using a car as a skateboard, I'll go and see it. If not, hard pass from me. These levels, while adding a smidge of variety, end up being a bit of a slog, and soon you'll be aching to see the platforms again. The dino sprites take up too much of the screen, making it hard to avoid obstacles, and overall it becomes a bit of a frustrating experience. That can be applied to the game as a whole. It's a decent challenge, but on hardware that's got so many decent platform games, why bother? Electronic Games covered it in their August 1994 edition. They gave it a B because that's how they rate things there, I guess. They said that it's a beautifully animated side-scrolling platform game. Plenty of continues without much button dexterity, making it ideal for novice gamers. For me though, We're Back overall is just as bog standard as platformers get. It's not bad enough to yeet it into the nearest tar pit, but there's little doubt that it plays, well, like a bit of a dinosaur. Like, subscribe, and K thanks, bye.
New York City.